Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah Fisher from Connective Family. And in this video, I want to talk about connection and boundaries. And can you have both? It was a conversation that I had recently with some colleagues around connection and boundaries, and something that certainly comes up when I'm working with parents is this sense of, can I have a really deep connection with somebody, but also can I hold boundaries? And I thought that's a really interesting thought process, because why shouldn't we be able to have a really deep connection with somebody, but also hold boundaries? And I think that's very, absolutely we can do that. And then part of the conversation was there are people who are having deep connection, but not holding boundaries. And that sense of they couldn't hold boundaries. And I get that, particularly as a parent, particularly if maybe your child's had significant mental health needs, or if they have a boundary put in place, their behavior is incredibly extreme. Maybe they're really violent and aggressive. Maybe they significantly self-harm. Maybe they just disappear for 3 days because you said no to something and you don't know where they are, or they're staying with friends, or whatever happens. So the fear of putting in a boundary might stop you from doing it as a parent. And so you just focus on connection. Now, connection is hugely important. Absolutely. It's the foundation of everything we teach at Connective Family. Oh, excuse me. Having that connection, creating a strong connection between parent and child, or adult and child, is really important. And it's through that connection that we create change. We mustn't mean that means we can't hold boundaries. I understand as a parent how easy it is to go towards the end of connection, or like to that end of the scale, and just hold connection. And that's your whole focus, because if you try and hold a boundary, however small that boundary might seem, the reaction is so extreme that actually you back away from it. Why wouldn't you? It's that idea that when we're thinking about de-escalating, we have to think about, do I escalate or do I give in? And actually, if you naturally give in because you're too tired, you're too stressed, you're fearful of the response, any of those options where we give in and we don't actually hold our ground and say, I've got this, I can manage this scenario, and no, you're not, this is the boundary. If we're not doing that and our senses on connection so much, then as the parent, it can feel very disempowering, but also for the child, it's not great either. And I think if you are feeling that I can hold connection, but I can't have any boundaries in my house, my child is in control. Maybe you're not allowed in the living room unless they tell you. Maybe you can only cook certain foods at certain times. Maybe their expectation is they can wake you up at 1 a.m. to make you cook them some food. Whatever it is, that they can come and go as they like. They can take money out of your purse, for example. They can do whatever. Then we need to think about, how do we put some boundaries in very slowly, very carefully, so that as the parent, you start to feel more comfortable, more confident in holding those boundaries. And it's in a way that works for the child, gets them used to it, but feels safe for you as the adult as well. And this is very much, for me, where supporters becomes really important sometimes, in terms of giving us the confidence to hold those boundaries, to have those people around us. And personally, I wouldn't suggest putting in a huge, big boundary straight away, because that's going to be really hard as the parent to hold. But you have a right as a parent to have a boundary, and that boundary might be, I'm not going to be hit, or it could be something really small. I'm not going to cook you a 3-course meal at 1 o'clock in the morning. Whatever that boundary is, it's about working with your coach, your practitioner, to go, okay, I'm not putting any boundaries in, and being honest with yourself about why. I know as a parent at times I've let some of those boundaries go because it was just easier. I was too tired. I was exhausted. I didn't have the energy for yet another argument about it, or whatever it was. And it was literally like, oh, I don't have the energy for another argument, which sounds like I'm going, really? How was I at that stage? Well, yeah, I was. Because as a parent, when your child is pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually you just go, whatever, you can just have it. And of course, then it becomes harder and harder and harder to hold any boundary. And so it's all about the connection. We focus on the connection. If I can get the connection right, these things won't happen. Well, they will if we're not holding boundaries. We need both hands here. We need the support, the love, the connection, and we need to hold some boundaries. And when I say some, I'm not a believer in boundaries for the sake of boundaries. We need some well thought through boundaries that are in place for really good reasons. So for safety reasons, for health reasons, for whatever it is, those boundaries need to be in place for good reasons that our children can understand as well. And I talk about boundaries rather than rules. You'll notice I've talked about boundaries rather than rules, but it's about having that connection, which is really important and absolutely, but not letting go of boundaries at the same time. So if you as a parent are sitting there thinking, yeah, I don't hold any boundaries at all, I get it. I understand why you might have let the boundaries go for any number of reasons. And that doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you're not a good enough parent. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It means you focused on connection, which is really important and really powerful. And the next stage is starting to put those boundaries back in so that you as the parent feel maybe safer in your own home, maybe more relaxed in your own home, more in control. And it's not about being controlling, but it's about having some control, maybe even just over your life, over what you wear, over when you're allowed to leave the house. So if you're thinking, yeah, I don't have any boundaries, I can't hold them, maybe my child just absolutely loses it every time I put a boundary in place, please speak to a practitioner. Ask us in our free Facebook group, Connective Parenting Using MVR. You're welcome to come and have some sessions with us, and let's start putting some boundaries in place so that you have connection, which is hugely important, but also some boundaries. And think about how do you put those boundaries in, through co-regulation, through connection, through deferred conversations, through believing yourself that you can hold those boundaries. And we can help you move forward with connection and boundaries to create the calm, relaxed home that you want, and also children who grow up feeling safe and loved and are able to manage boundaries and cope and accept that there are always boundaries in life, and they feel more comfortable with them. So that was my thoughts today on connection and boundaries. As always, if you've got any questions, any thoughts, any comments, pop them either below the video, or as I say, jump into our free Facebook group, Connective Family Using MVR, or you can contact us through the website. And there's more information on these topics on our website, connectivefamily.com. So I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in a later video.